Greetings, YouTube. At my company, we have two types of scales that we use on a regular basis. The scales count parts for us, so we don't have to count out the parts that by themselves, and also to confirm that we put the correct number of pieces inside a box in the event that we put them in bunches. Um, and one of them is a scale that everybody seems to know how to program. The instructions are pretty clear and they're fairly direct. But the other scale, which is one we don't use as often, is not as clear. And apparently, on my particular shift in my cell, I'm the only guy that knows how to program it. So if my lead says go program a scale for someone, I go program a scale for someone. But over the years, and I've been doing this for years, no one's ever asked me to show them how to program it. I've volunteered to show them how to program it, and they didn't want to. I've showed them how to program it, and it hasn't clicked. Now, in some ways, I can understand this because I personally need to do something more than once to figure out how to do it. And if I don't continue to do something over time, you give me long enough and I will forget how to do it. I used to know how to print labels at my company because I was an inspector. I don't have any bloody idea how to print labels, none whatsoever. But though with knowing my company, my password's probably still valid if I knew what it was. So I understand that to a certain degree, but I have programmed these scales for sometimes for the same people, again, for years, and no one's ever learned from me how to do it. And I found myself thinking about this recently, just after having programmed the scale for someone. And I think that kind of intellectual laziness that we all can fall victim to is emblematic of just overall problems in society, that we all do this. We all do this all the time. Um, for example, there's a difference between not knowing how to change the oil in your car and not wanting to change the oil in your car. I know how to change the oil in my car. I don't want to do it. It's time consuming, it's messy, and I end up with a bunch of used oil I don't want. But I know how to do it. And that's a low level piece of technical knowledge. Um, and it's one of those things that I think that we should all be able to handle if we own a motor vehicle. I can still do things like change batteries and I can replace headlights. So there are other low level things that I can do and I'm comfortable with. I'll even go so far as to do things like change a thermostat or something like that. But beyond that, I am willing to cede ground to the experts. But there's a difference between not wanting to do it because you want to remain ignorant of it, and not wanting to do it because it's messy and time consuming. There's a difference between convenience and ignorance. And I think if we all ceded less ground to ignorance, we'd be better off. I know I'm guilty of it. I'm sure you are too. Just some day-to-day tasks you don't know. Now, I'm sure all of us have also encountered individuals that when you do ask them to tell you something or demonstrate something, they don't want to. They're trying to protect their particular intellectual corner of the universe. If they have this mental framework, if they keep that piece of information as exclusively theirs, they will be less likely to be replaced, to be unwanted. Maybe, I'm not sure. I've encountered that as well. The attitude, oh, you don't need to know that. Well, I'm not sure if that's really up to somebody else to tell me what I do and don't need to know. But I'm just talking about the day-to-day things where we're intellectually lazy. And it doesn't help if we do that. I was listening to NPR the other day. I listen to that station. I listen to a little bit of Hampshire NPR and New Hampshire Public Radio constantly. Gage and I listen to out of Boston. And they were talking with one of the well-spoken neo-Nazis that have been key in pushing the alt-right neo-Nazi narrative in America. Because he's, again, well-spoken, he seems reasonable, even though he says things like black people are inherently less intelligent than white people. And it's the way he delivers it makes people stop and listen. And my wife points out that there are a lot of people that don't understand framework that he's pushing, the narrative that's being pushed. But I do. So I don't really want to listen to this because it's the same old crap that I've heard 1,000 times before. Other people may need to. And I guess it's on one ground, on one level, that's good that they're willing to, reach out and try to figure something out. But on another, is this battling that intellectual laziness, or is it contributing to it? Are we saying, okay, well, the experts, the journalists are handling this, so we don't have to? Or the way the journalist handles something, is it making that seem more or less reasonable position? Are we not applying due diligence to the work of a journalist because we are assuming that they know what they're doing, and we're assuming they're not biasing their information or their structure in their interviews or research to push their own narrative? And while sometimes it's just something as silly as programming scale, sometimes it's a lot less silly. Sometimes it's really important that we aren't intellectually lazy. And I think we have too much of that in America in particular, and in the West, and to a large degree. We just have too much intellectual laziness. We don't practice due diligence, and we don't hunt down the information we need because we assume that the experts will do it for us. Sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes we have to hunt things down on our own. We have to have a deep enough and broad enough knowledge base to be able to get that whiff of bullshit when someone's trying to sell something to us. So I think if America had less intellectual laziness, we wouldn't have just committed one of the greatest acts of foolishness this nation ever had.